Warren Buffett is a very famous billionaire investor in the US. He's worth 80, 90 billion dollars, but he made 99% of that after he was 50 years old by buying stock and keeping it and buying and buying and buying and buying and saving and saving. Kylie Jenner, the Kardashian who lives down the street, she's 22 and a billionaire. Okay? I don't know about you, but if I could have it today and not when I'm 80 years old, I could enjoy life. I could help people. I could change the world. What did she do? She figured out how to connect to and monetize people that were one click away.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Being Different show. The goal of the show is to introduce you all to people and ideas that can allow you to take your life to the next level. Our guest today is a global disruptor who has been disrupting industries since his early 20s. He's an entrepreneur and an entrepreneur who is globally recognized as an expert on disruption and innovation. He's so good at what he does that everyone from the Pope to the President calls on him for advice. He's the former independent vice chairman of Deloitte. He's also an adjunct professor at America's largest engineering school and teaches innovation. He has held senior management role at EMI, SONY, and Universal Studios. So guys, please help me in welcoming the man who is also an author of Disrupt You and his upcoming book, Future Proofing You, Jay Samit. Jay, welcome to the
Thanks for
show.
having me on the show.
If I were to read all your achievements, it would have taken
That
you
would be
more
the whole
than a
show.
month to do so. But it's
But
a pleasure.
the funny thing is, I still think of myself as somebody young, straight out of school, trying to change the world. I just
That's,
avoid mirrors.
that's the best part about it. So, we started being different just because we were so much dissatisfied with the education system. Do you think that schools and colleges come in your way of becoming successful and doing something really great?
So you have to remember why schools and universities were created. They weren't created to inspire. They were created to make factory workers. They were created to make civil workers. They were make sure that people could join the existing institutions. If you think about it, the IQ test was actually invented by the military to decide who was worth training and who was cannon fodder.
Mhm.
So pretty much what we're teaching is the same stuff when it was just an agrarian society. And it really didn't change for the industrial age. And now in the information age and going beyond, it's lost touch. And so the idea that we now live in a world where every 48 hours, there's a new self-made billionaire. Let that sink in. What were you doing the past 2 days? If you didn't make a billion, I guess you're a slacker. So I grew up no different than anybody listening to my voice right now. My dad was a public school teacher. We're modest house. And if you would have told me when I grew up that dozens of friends became billionaires, I'd ask you what you were smoking. I mean, I didn't know a millionaire. I didn't know any concept of this.
Mhm.
But when I started seeing it happen again and again and again, I realized not only is it repeatable, you don't have to come from money. Most of today's billionaires are self-made. You don't have to go to the right school. You don't have to have an engineering degree.
Mhm.
I mean, think about it. Everybody listening to this podcast has written more code or the same amount of code as Steve Jobs, who built a $1 trillion software and hardware company. He never wrote a line of code. He's not an engineer. You only need two things. And both of my books really start from this premise: insight and perseverance. I can teach anyone insight. Two of my students did $150 million their first year. You can teach people how to create. And perseverance, there are tricks to reinforce it, but you can't force a person to want to be successful. And success isn't just about money. That's actually the least important part.
Mhm.
Success is finding a purpose. The purpose of life is to live a life of purpose. And all that entrepreneurs do is help people. Big mistake is people think it's something that you sell. That's not an entrepreneur. An entrepreneur solves a problem. If you solve a problem for 5 people, you have friends. Solve for 1 million, you have wealth. But when you solve for 1 billion, you change the world. How cool is that? Everybody else built the infrastructure. We're all one click away from each other. So it just takes a nanosecond to change the world.
That's pretty profound. And I feel like when you said like it takes perseverance and insight to become a CEO and an entrepreneur, I was wondering, how do you even train for insight? How does one train for insight?
So in my book, Disrupt You, I have a thing called the 3 problems a day, 30-day challenge.
Mhm.
Today, not tomorrow, write down 3 problems in your life. Pretty easy. Last time I was in Mumbai, traffic was like, there's a problem, right? But what happens is after a day or two, you start running out of problems. Not because they don't exist, but because you're so used to accepting the world the way it is, you don't identify these things as problems. So the traffic's a great example. There were 2 guys sitting in traffic in Tel Aviv. And it occurred to them that the phone company knows where their phone is.
Mhm.
So if the phone company told one car to go left and the other driver to go right, you'd cut traffic in half. That company was known as Waze. They became billionaires without a penny in revenue. And that brings me to the other thing that people don't realize. Wealth today isn't created by, I buy an apple for $1 and I sell it to you for $2. There's a fundamental flaw, and that's how we were taught in school. That's called, in game theory, zero-sum game. The only way I get money is if I take it from you. The only way you get money is if you take it from me. And if you start with that mindset, that fixed mindset, suddenly it's everybody else is competing with me and taking my job, my money. Foreign countries are taking my money. This group is taking my money. And it just ends up in this world of paranoia and hate. On the other hand, let's pretend I start a company today and I sell you 10% of it for $10,000. What am I now worth? Well, I have a $100,000 company. You own 10%. I now have $90,000. I didn't wake up with that $90,000, but I can now spend that $90,000 just like real money. So money isn't made by governments. It's created out of thin air by entrepreneurs. And that explains how Jeff Bezos could lose money for 10 years and come out the other side of it as the richest man in the world. So people have to understand how money's created, how value is created, and then how do you capture the value that you create? And that's where a lot of people get lost. Oh, I have a good idea, but somebody will beat me to it or make money. And that's really, it's that simple. There's no gatekeeper stopping you. And in the 21st century, and what the pandemic taught us is you don't have to be in a first world country or in a major city. You can be anywhere and have customers everywhere. So you can live on a tropical island. You can live somewhere that's inexpensive. You can, work from and run your company virtually. You don't need a headquarters and rent and overhead. So when I wrote Future Proofing You, I looked at all the changes that have happened that you can build a business that will never be disrupted. And you can make sure that you never have to worry about getting another job. And to prove it, I did something that I think your audience will enjoy. I had a lot of success with the first book, Changed Lives. You get tons of, if you ever want to write a book, please do, because you hear from readers around the world. And I'm just trying to pay what I learned forward. And I get all these wonderful, what I call love letters, these emails of how their life changed. Guy was a poor dentist in Pakistan, now he's rich. I mean, all over the world. But I get these letters, emails occasionally from a millennial that said, your book's all motivational, but I could never do that. Nothing bothers me more than if I feel I can't get through to somebody. So I decided to put my reputation on the test and put everything I knew on the line. And I took a young man who was on welfare, grew up on welfare. His parents had been on welfare, grew up in public housing. And I mentored him 1 day a week for a year. I gave him no money, didn't tell him what business to start. and I didn't introduce him to any contacts. He went from homeless to self-made millionaire in 11 months. And that's what I outline in Future Proofing You. And what it came down to is accepting 12 truths about business. And they don't teach you this stuff in college. It drives me crazy. I mean, there's a meme that goes around that goes, I'm so glad I figured out how to figure out the area of a parallelogram in school, as opposed to learning about taxes, because that's so helpful during parallelogram season. I mean, we're not taught how the world actually works.
That is so profound. And when you talked about that, we need to create wealth. A lot of people don't even understand that concept of creating wealth.
Yeah, they think that you save. So Warren Buffett is a very famous billionaire investor in the US. He's worth 80, 90 billion dollars, but he made 99% of that after he was 50 years old by buying stock and keeping it and buying and buying and buying and buying and saving and saving. Kylie Jenner, the Kardashian who lives down the street, she's 22 and a billionaire. Okay. I don't know about you, but if I could have it today and not when I'm 80 years old, I could enjoy life. I could help people. I could change the world. What did she do? She figured out how to connect to and monetize people that were one click away. A generation before, she would have signed a contract with a cosmetic company to put her name on a lipstick. Why not just figure out the supply chain, sell your own lipstick, and keep all the money? It was that simple.
That is so interesting because we see various differences in people becoming billionaires at different ages, and it's really interesting to see how things turned out for them as well.
It's about thinking with this mindset of having a growth mindset. And if you start with the belief that today can be better than yesterday and you have the power to make it so, you actually light up the synaptic nerves.
Mhm.
And it gives you the same effect that drugs would give to people. And you'll suddenly be more aware and have ideas that wouldn't have come to you, and you'll see life differently. And so people that think like disruptors, they can train their minds to do that, or they come up naturally. Years ago, I worked with somebody who's just born thinking that way. And he was with his girlfriend and he was flying down to the Bahamas, and his flight got canceled. Have you ever been in an airport and your flight was canceled? What
Yeah.
do? 99.9% of the population just sits there. What am I going to do? He looked around and said, look at all these people. They're all stranded. How much does it cost to rent a plane? Did the math so that he and his girlfriend could fly for free, and held up a sign. And that's how a music guy named Richard Branson started an airline, with a magic marker and a piece of poster board that he found in the trash. And he's created 8 different billion-dollar companies in 8 different industries. And I'm here to tell you, not only is he not an engineer, he can't read a spreadsheet, but he sees problems and sees solutions. So we live in a time right now where there are so many opportunities to apply technologies that other people created to solve a problem. 10 years ago, when the iPhone came out, okay, you now know how you can't live without a smartphone. It is part of the world. You can't imagine life before it, But when it came out, Apple had spent all that money creating this. They had a vision for it. But you know what the 2 best-selling apps were the first year? One was a fart app that made fart sounds, and the other was a game with cats. So people didn't think about all the other billion-dollar companies that have been created. So now I can't take you back in time to go make those opportunities, but I'll tell you what starts next December and in 2023, spatial reality, augmented reality, heads-up display. We'll all wear glasses that give us information. We'll have our universe augmented. Well, the big guys are spending billions. So Google's a client, Facebook's a client, Apple's a client, Microsoft's a client. They are trying to grab the big pieces of this. If you're no longer taking your iPhone out of your pocket, if Apple doesn't sell you these, Apple goes out of business. It's an existential threat. If you're no longer looking on your phone or your laptop to search for information and the information comes to you here, if Google isn't here, Google goes out of business. So the big guys, they're spending billions. 1/3 of all VC money is going towards the space. But now, what are they not doing? They're not building all the individual apps that can solve a problem that now we couldn't solve before. And I've seen some of what friends and other companies are doing, but there's so much opportunity. And it's a $1 trillion business where no one has a head start on you. If that doesn't get you excited, I don't know what does.
That that is totally amazing because I mean having the right kind of mindset and being able to see the world in terms of solving for problems, that just gives you another kind of vision and perspective, and that allows you to see the world differently, so to say.
And I'll give you a little secret that comes, I guess, with being on the other side of 50. Money and wealth do not make you happy. I also know a lot of people that are second and third generations of wealthy people that just inherited it, had no challenges, and are miserable people.
Mhm.
I'm not saying there's anything wrong with being wealthy, and my life's been very good. But you know where you get happiness from? Helping others. So you can now create solutions to problems that not only give you a return on your investment and give you money and wealth and $1 billion or whatever you want, but you're actually doing it to make the world a better place. If the world doesn't have any problems, then I'm wrong. But last time I looked, there's so many problems. Why not come up with a solution? And so what happens is there's people that create technology just for the sake of technology. And then the entrepreneur comes along and says, I'll take something from this pile and something from this pile and solve a new problem. And that's all that it is. I mean, I created the first auction, which you now know is eBay, and worked with Reid Hoffman for what you know is LinkedIn. And all these things were just started from a very simple problem. And then you go from there.
You know, when I see your story as well, your journey, you've been widely successful in a different lot of different industries, right? What do you think has attributed to your success? What factors and skills you might consider that has attributed to your success?
Well, first of all, I'm dyslexic. So my brain's wired differently.
Hmm.
So I didn't fit in that regular box. I was told I was stupid. I was told all those things in school. But I could find a solution to a problem. I could figure out how to go and do it. So I remember being in my 20s, and I'll give you a great example. When I got out of college,
Hmm.
Star Wars had first come out. And I was like, oh man, I want to make Hollywood special effects. That would be the coolest job in the world. Couple of problems. I knew nothing about computers or animation. I knew nobody in Hollywood, and I sure didn't know how to make special effects. Other than that, I was completely qualified. Um, so how do I go about solving that? Well, I figure there's people that have those jobs. How did they get those jobs? So back before the internet, you used to have ads in the trade papers, Variety and Hollywood Reporter. So I put in an ad describing the job I want to get as if I was a company, a production company, an entry level that could do something. And I did that to get data. So I got a bunch of resumes in, and those resumes told me two key pieces of information.
Hmm.
One, here's what I would need to have on my resume and to have achieved to get those types of jobs, because these people obviously had done that. Number two, anybody that responded to that ad had one foot out the door. So now knew a whole bunch of companies that were going to have openings before anybody else did.
Hmm.
Now, let me give you the 2021 version of that, which I write about in Disrupt You. Bright young man got a job at one of the world giant ad agencies in New York. These companies employ tens of thousands of people. He thought Mad Men and advertising is all exciting and fun. He's going to do all this. And he's sitting in a cubicle writing down numbers. I mean, he wants to shoot himself. He's so far from anything creative, and he can't imagine how do you get out of that to someday do something better. Mm-hmm. So he's Googling around one day, and he realizes that of the 5 most famous creative directors at the head of the 5 big ad agencies in the world, nobody has bought their names as keywords. So for $9, he bought those names. And whenever they Googled themselves, because famous people have to Google themselves to see if something bad's written about them, mm-hmm. It said, hey, I want to work for you. Click here to see my portfolio. 3 of the 5 offered him jobs. He made suddenly 4 times more money, accelerated his career by 20 years for the price of buying a coffee at Starbucks. It's about solving a problem. What problem do you want to solve? How can you get data? Everything is about data. Data has no ego. Invite it to every decision in your life.
It tells you exactly what needs to be said. It gives you the proper reality in front of your own eyes, right?
There were a few years ago where I had a client that wanted to compete with Victoria's Secret, a lingerie company. Mm-hmm. And they figured out how to make the supply chain from Asia cheaper, and they had the product, and they wanted to get a Hollywood star, a beautiful Hollywood star to be the spokesperson. Who do you pick? And they rattled off this name and that name. Do you want somebody that's sexy, somebody that's married, somebody that's single, somebody young, old, curvy, slender? I mean, you can have all types of stuff. The answer is data. So what we did was we ran ads with no permission with a bunch of different people's faces on them, saw what the click-through rates are, and very quickly saw who was the celebrity that would move the most product. Now we go to the agents, the agency that represents all the Hollywood stars, and say, we want to hire somebody. And they name a big name and go, nah, I couldn't afford that. And they name another, nah, I couldn't afford it. And by the time they get down to our person, they don't know that that's who we want. Mm-hmm. They don't think anything about it, because what's the difference here? I have data and they don't. I know the market value, they don't. This is why Netflix knows who to star. When we were at SONY, we thought we had done everything with Adam Sandler that could ever be done. His career was past its point. Adam Sandler makes more money for Netflix, and he's their number 1 talent. Mm-hmm. So they know who's watching what, when they tune in, what they'd watch more of, which products from which countries would work where. It's all data. Most of our decisions moving forward, especially as we get into an augmented world, will be AI taking data to bring information to us as opposed to us searching for it. So if I'm in my self-driving car going down the freeway, the car knows what time it is. It knows that I haven't eaten lunch. I usually eat lunch, and 4 times a week I eat at McDonald's. So if there's McDonald's 2 kilometers ahead, all of a sudden French fries are floating in the sky, and if you wave for them, you get free French fries, and the car will drive you to McDonald's. Mm-hmm. That's not science fiction. That's what's coming.
That is also so very interesting to see when that comes up, like being able to wave at your French fries and that automatically comes into your car.
But think of what that does to the sales cycle in marketing. Every moment becomes a time when you could make a sale. And people, because of the pandemic, got used to things being delivered, but now you're going to have drones being able to deliver things. You're going to have digital goods. So there's so many more ways to solve these issues. Mm-hmm. One of my favorite startups in Silicon Valley right now, my favorite food is pizza, okay? It is a self-driving, so autonomous vehicle filled with pizza ovens. When it gets the order, it figures out when it's the right distance by traffic to turn on the oven, so it's completely perfectly right out of the oven the second they're at your door. A drone on the roof takes it out, and you put a little QR code on a table or your front porch, and it delivers it right there. No humans involved.
That is mesmerizing.
And what happens is anything that can be automated will. Half of all jobs on planet Earth will disappear in the next 5 years. So whether you like it or not, and I've said this for years, everybody's career will get disrupted. This year, it proved it, okay? The pandemic, the four corners of the earth, there's nobody that wasn't impacted by it, from Antarctica to Iceland. But you have a choice. Disruption isn't about what happens to you, it's about how you respond to what happens to you. So with a fixed mindset, I lost my job, I'm sad, I'm this or that. With a growth mindset, this is the greatest opportunity, I'm free to do what I want. So what I never understood is most employers pay people enough not to quit, but not enough to care.
Mm-hmm.
So most people are dissatisfied with their job. But yet when they lose this job that they hate, they're unhappy. That makes no sense. And if you're in a job that you're not growing and learning and fulfilling, you say, okay, I wasted a day of my life. But that day turns into a week, that week turns into a year, and one day you're going to be old and gray. And go talk to grandparents or senior citizens and ask them what their biggest regret in life is. And I can guarantee you it's not something that they did and failed at. It's something that they failed to try. So I am a repeat failure. I keep on trying things until it works. That's how children learn to walk. They don't wake up one day and go, today I'm going to walk across the room. I'm feeling it. They get up, they fall, they try again, they try again. How do you make it to the end of a video game? You get so far, you die, you figured out that obstacle, you go further. Being an entrepreneur, being in business is no different. Now, if you can make a lot of those iterations between your two ears before you start spending money, and so a lot of Disrupt You is telling people the steps, then you can cycle endlessly and get further along in your product so that by the time you raise capital and get into the market, you don't have to then get the data of why your idea sucks.
Right. You also talk a lot about delegation and being able to effectively delegate the roles and responsibilities. So, firstly, why do you think that's important? And also, what sorts of activities do you need to delegate?
So one of the places where a lot of entrepreneurs get stuck at the very beginning is whoever you hire won't be as good as you.
Mhm.
And so it takes more work to spend with them and you get frustrated. And so the mindset that I want to get into people's minds, and I did this with Vin, the young man that I coached, I said, listen, let's use a school metaphor. You're an A student, you get 100% on every test you take.
Mhm.
If you're going to start a business, you have to hire C students. They're only going to get a 70, guaranteed. Don't be disappointed. Don't be frustrated. You're hiring C students. That's it. So if a C student takes the same test, to follow the metaphor, they get 70. But if you hire two of them, they get 140. If you hire three of them, they get 210.
Mhm.
So it's about figuring out how to scale by not expecting everybody to be a genius like you are or to know the business as well, but to figure out what are those things where others are better suited and your time should focus on things that only you can do. So I delegate out almost everything that's possible. I mean, I've had hit video games that I've created. I've created, hardware. I'm chairman of a robot company right now.
Mhm.
I'm not an engineer. I'm not a designer. I know how to hire good people. I know how to trust the people that I hire and how to move it down. Now, the other flip side of that is for 30 years, I've told every employee that's worked for me, whether it's been at a company where I have 300,000 employees or 5 people, if you report to me and in your first year, you do not make any mistakes, I will fire you. And I'm quite serious about it because your job isn't to play it safe. Your job is to try new things and figure out where you can grow. And you only learn by failing. So you either learn or you earn. And that's the way to look at life. So if you're at a job where you're learning new things,
Mhm.
think of it as somebody paying you to go to graduate business school. You're actually learning stuff. If you're now at a job after a while and you're not learning anything new, why are you still there? And it doesn't take vast amount of capital. And there's so many ways to get capital. It's not like, oh, I have to know rich people or this, that. There's crowdfunding. There's ICOs with virtual currency. There's endless new ways. And it's so easy to find people that would be customers that you can talk to potential customers long before you have a product.
Mm-hmm.
One of the big sections that I didn't cover in Disrupt You that I really went into depth in future proofing you is how to get mentors. You don't need one mentor in your life. You're going to need a whole series of them at different stages. And you don't go and just call up somebody or write them an email, will you be my mentor? The best mentorships start without ever using the M word at all. So how do you find the right kind of people on LinkedIn? How do you approach them? How do you get it? Because they want validation. They want to feel that what they've learned is useful. Most people want to help you. You'll find that, shocking in many cases. One of the things that I've been fortunate is I've been at the beginning of a whole bunch of industries. And in the early days of the first PCs, we didn't think of everybody's competition. We asked around to figure out how to solve stuff. Now that I'm building robots for agriculture, there's a few companies around the world trying to solve this multi-trillion-dollar problem. And everybody talks to each other. It's fun. It's collaborative. We're all trying to, if I can remove all the poison of herbicides in growing food, less cancer in people, farmers make more money, and we just have robots that take care of the weeds. Turns out you don't have to till the soil, and 25% of greenhouse gases come from tilling the soil on farms. So you get a healthier planet, healthier people. I didn't want to run another company, but when somebody came to me, I felt morally obligated. If I have the skill set and I have the ability to get this company to the next level, and I can help 1 billion people, I can't think of a better use of my time.
And that is really interesting because even I saw that company and it looked really, I mean, it's solving problems, it's saving, it's providing you good food without having all
Yeah.
those weeds. And it was really interesting to see that happening.
And what's also interesting, in the United States, no farmers make money. They're all subsidized by the government. It's a tough business for a whole bunch of reasons.
Mm-hmm.
So we looked at not just, here's our robots that go out and basically eat the weeds. That's how an engineer would look, and that's his job to make the robot. But I wanted to look at the whole business cycle. Okay, how does a farmer's business work? How does that food get to the table? And what we did by changing the whole model is we made robots as a service, where use our robots and we'll buy your crops from you for 40% more than you're presently making, because we can supply them to people that would like to have organic ingredients, soy, wheat, milo, sorghum, and they'll pay more for it. So now the farmer doesn't have to buy any equipment, doesn't have to learn how to use the equipment, doesn't have to pay for spraying of chemicals, doesn't have to handle carcinogenic things that kill them and make them sterile. He just makes more money. It kind of win-win right there. Then the consumer's getting healthier food. And in the US, all of our farms run into the Mississippi, that's the big river, and go down into what's the Gulf of Mexico, which presently has no living fish because so much poison goes down there each year.
Gosh.
So this just got better and better of, okay, you're taking greenhouse gases, you're taking out the equivalent of taking out 90 million cars out of the US if we did the 300 million acres of farmland in the US. This is a massively simple problem to solve. Why didn't it exist before? Real simple. You know what a Venn diagram is? If you did a Venn diagram of all the entrepreneurs going to Stanford wanting to do a startup, and all the people that grew up on farms, it looks more like glasses. The two circles don't overlap. So I had an engineer who had worked for me at SONY who grew up on a farm. His father was a farmer. His grandfather was a farmer. His great-grandfather. And he went back from the big city and went back to the farm and started trying to figure out, how do we solve this? He didn't want to make a robot. He tried everything else. And when he finally realized his old job that, you could solve this with, AI and some mechanical engineering, he knew that he had a solution that people hadn't tried. So what I love about talking to young people, and I speak at so many colleges around the world, my book's in it's coming out in Urdu next, and Italian and Icelandic this year, is that a lot of time young people will come up with a good idea, a really great idea, and they search on the internet and they can't find it. So they just figured that somebody else must be doing this. They just can't figure out how to find it. It doesn't occur to them that they may be the first person to think of that solution, because here's what's happened as you get older. If you had to make all the decisions it takes to get through your day, how to walk, how to open a door, how to do, we end up on autopilot. And the older we get, the more calcified we get. When my youngest was getting his first apartment, we went driving around and said, oh, look at that sign, write down that phone number. He took out his phone and he took a picture. Yes, I take pictures with my phone. Yes, I know it's a camera phone. Yes, I could have done that, but I'm so used to, you see information, get out a pencil and write it down. So if you don't have that lifetime of habits that developed before these technologies came along, if you've always been digitally literate, if you've always been connected, adapting to a heads-up display is really just adding a simple interface to a problem. It kept your hands free. You could have played Pokemon Go with a tablet, but it's a heck of a lot easier to run around with, nothing in your hands. So one of the things that I'm probably most excited about spatial reality is everybody thinks of adding things in heads-up display. There's a company that I was working with that is working with Walmart, our biggest physical retailer, scanning 3D of every product on all their shelves to do the opposite. Let's pretend you went to your doctor and your doctor said you have high blood pressure, you can't have anything with sodium in it. You can walk into a store with 40,000 food products in it and say, show me the foods without sodium, or show me everything that's vegan, and everything else disappears. Literally, it disappears. So you can take things away from the physical world, not just add them. So you want to take a tour of Liverpool, England, and have a tour with an avatar of one of the Beatles to take you around. I mean, endless possibilities. And I'm so excited and I'm thrilled to live in an era where there are millions of people just trying to make my life easier.
That is so interesting. A huge part of your book also talks about like disrupting yourself. And what does that even mean? Like how does one even disrupt oneself?
So the first thing that I realized is everybody thinks of changing the world, but nobody thinks of changing themselves. So for whatever reason, your parents, your teachers, whatever, they gave up on a certain amount of their dreams and they were hurt and crushed by it. So to protect you, they try to talk you out of those things, right? If you got out of the top university in India as the top engineering student, and you told your mother you want to start your own startup and turn down this job from Google, she'd probably smack you in the side of the head. Take the job with Google. That's a safe job.
Right.
So the first thing you have to do in self-disruption is we're so used to that voice in our head saying things. If you can change your self-perception, that's a hard thing to change. You were bad at math in the third grade, so you say, I'm bad at math. Well, I'm sure I could put you back in the third grade now and you'd be the smartest among all the 7-year-olds, okay? Or you're afraid of public speaking, whatever it might be. If you can overcome and change that, then you realize everything is malleable. You can change the entire world because the world is really what we perceive it to be. Same with ourselves. And whoever you were last night when you went to bed, you don't have to be today. It's that simple.
Wow. And I was listening to your commencement speech as well, and in that you said the only person that can stop you is you. And
Yeah,
that was
and it's true. Here's what happens. If somebody tells you no, here's what they're telling you. You can't do it with them. It's their loss. It's not that you can't do it. You just can't do it with them. And I mean, when I had my first idea for a video game, this is early on in the computer era, I realized that it would be good for Microsoft to have games on the Microsoft PC platform. but I needed music. This was before I ran record labels and worked with rock stars. So send an email to the world's richest man, Bill Gates.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't know him. I'm 20 something, sitting in a 6-person company in nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
Told him this great idea and how instead of video games being beep, 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 boop, 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 have real rock and roll soundtracks.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, but what I need you to do, Bill, is would you ask the richest guy in the music industry,
Mm-hmm.
David Geffen, to take a meeting with me?
Mm-hmm.
And I had nothing to lose. If Bill Gates never opened the email or never said yes, what did I lose? Nothing. What did it cost me to send an email? When he did it, oh my God, did my life change? When the world's richest man tells you to meet somebody who's not going to take that meeting. And then by working with Geffen, I got to work with, everybody in the music industry. Aerosmith, Guns N' Roses, Peter Gabriel. Aerosmith has made more money from being in video games than from selling albums. We were the first ones to put them in a thing. So why not try? I often kid I'd love to do a speech one day of all the things that I tried that just didn't work. Because people just see the greatest hits reel. It's like when you watch, cricket on TV or something. You see the great plays. You don't see those whole boring moments when nothing happens. But every time I failed, I didn't go back to where I started. I learned. Just like a video game. I got farther and farther. So you fail your way forward. You fail your way up. There's no shame. You know what shame is? Shame is giving up, throwing in the towel.
Mm-hmm.
You never know how close you are. And I've seen it again and again. So many of the businesses that we have nowadays were actually pivots of something that failed. And one comes to mind that always gets a laugh when I show it in talks. When broadband came along, there was already computer dating. Before Tinder and everything, you used to go on a website and you see a still picture and read about the person, and otherwise the same. And these 3 guys had this great idea. What if we use videos where you can see a video of a person and get their personality and be better for dating and all that? And they built a perfect site, and it was a failure. It was called Tune In Hookup. No one wanted to date these losers. The very first video was a guy at the zoo in front of the elephants
Right.
telling you to date them. I mean, it was pathetic. But what did I say you have to do? Look at data. So they looked at the data, and though nobody wanted to date these things and the site was a failure, they noticed something that wasn't in their business plan. These videos were so awful that everybody wanted to share them with their friends. Look how bad this person is. Who would ever date this person? So they changed the name of Tune In Hookup to YouTube and became billionaires in their first year in business without a dollar in revenue.
And YouTube is
Twitter
a
was a
part of our
music
lives
company.
now.
I'm sorry?
YouTube is a part of our lives now. It's
All these things are. Twitter's a part of our lives. That was a failed music business. I mean, it goes on and on and on. And I'm constantly dumbfounded of why most people would rather ask for praise than ask for criticism. How can I make my product better? What am I doing wrong? Where am I missing the mark? How can I become a success? Well, you become a success by being honest about what the shortcomings are with your idea. Most ideas suck. I have what's called the zombie idea in my book. You keep on trying to kill an idea, find every potential customer that tells you why your idea is horrible, because it is.
mm-hmm.
All ideas in the beginning have a germ of something, but they're really not thought out. But the more people tell you what's wrong with it, you get farther and farther in the jungle than anybody on the outside ever did. And it's when you're in that middle of it that you find the gold. You go, now I see what works. Had they not built that failed dating site, they would have never known that people enjoy sharing videos.
that is that is true, because if you never even try, how would you even know that what's working and what's not?
Yeah.
So, one thing that you talked about was like a lot of people think that in order to make something big and like to become a billionaire, they have to create things from scratch. And and you said like you had a bit of a different thought onto that. What do you like? What's that?
So you have to understand that scientists are not trying to build a business. They're discovering something, they're solving something. They figured out how to make plastic, whatever the thing might be. It's up to somebody else to come along and say, wow, thanks for inventing that. I could use that to solve this problem. And you may switch businesses. And the easiest example is everybody's told this baloney story that Gutenberg invented the printing press and movable type, and what a genius, as if it just comes to you one day, I'm going to create this whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing could be farther than the truth. What happened is 1500 years before Gutenberg, somebody in ancient Greece got tired of squeezing olives to make olive oils. His hand was probably hurting, and he made an olive press.
Mm-hmm.
It took another 1500 years for somebody to say, you know what, if I make a bigger one, we don't have to stomp on grapes anymore and we can make wine. And so in the 1500s, all of a sudden, everybody could make wine because you didn't need a lot of employees to stomp on grapes. And there was so much wine being made that the price of wine went to zip. Every winery went out of business. And there's all these leftover wine presses for pressing grapes. And Gutenberg's looking at that thing and says, I got another use for that. Instead of hiring scribes to write everything, I could move some letters around and use the press to do it. So many of the great things that are out there, so many of the successful businesses are building on something that already exists. You don't have to invent the iPhone to come up with an app. You don't have to understand how AR glasses work to understand what you want to happen.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, real simple app. I spend most of the time pre-pandemic flying around to dozens of countries each year speaking. And invariably, you get to some hotel and you're supposed to be in the London room. And heck, if I can ever find that, how great would it be just to stand in the lobby and go London room and see a path? Or do I remember where I parked my car at the airport? Or endless other simple little things. Well, once people start realizing that help is there, they'll demand it more and more, just as we can't live without our phones today. And the proof of it is in the US in 2020, last year, 80 million pairs of glasses were sold that came with one app, Focus. You're wearing a pair. They help you focus. There's another 50 million pairs that were sold that came with a different app called Sun. Oh, the sun's so bright, I'm going to wear sunglasses. So we're already used to wearing glasses with one app. What if I could go into any restaurant anywhere in the world and read the menu?
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, augmented is not just visual, it's also audio. What if I could now go to any beautiful woman at any bar anywhere in the world and have a conversation? What she says is translated into the language I know. What I say is translated into the language she knows. Imagine what you could do in business, being able to talk to anybody. All those things are obvious and are being done. But there's some problem in somebody's life that's listening to my voice right now that many people have, but nobody stepped up to solve. I'm thinking of, like, I don't know if you know Open Table. Open Table was an app to make reservations at restaurants. Mm-hmm. So instead of calling, getting put on hold, talk to the person, do you have a thing? It's a self-scheduler. Mm-hmm. That became $1 billion business. There are so many of those little itty bitty things that you can solve. And what's great is it used to be, yeah, we're stuck with finding the best employees that live within a mile of you, or 5 kilometers or 10 kilometers, whatever, traffic would bear. Now you can hire virtual people. You can hire people anywhere in the world. You have access to the world's greatest minds. Or if you remember 99 Designs?
Yep.
I thought that was brilliant. And every time I use them, so it's a company where you say, I will pay this much money. And if people I want a book cover, I want a logo for my company, I'll put up $1,000 and I guarantee somebody gets $1,000. If you put $1,000 up, you'll get 500 artists from around the world submitting stuff. And when I pick the winner, sometimes I always ask where they are. They're from any country in the world. Some are, making money on the side. They have a great graphics job at a major ad agency or design firm. And some is a kid in college in Botswana. It's talent is seamless. And you can now do this and build your company with great people from everywhere. And I've now, had employees in dozens of countries and done this. And I'm an American, which means by definition, I only speak one language. Two, if you count sarcasm. But I'm just so excited. How can you not be excited to live in a time where opportunity is endless and the pace of change has never gone faster? So here's the other piece of advice. I hate competition. I absolutely, you may say I'm a competitive person, but I hate competition. There's always somebody smarter than me, somebody richer than me, somebody better looking, somebody better connected, somebody that's something, something, something. But if you're doing something that nobody's done, by definition, you're the best in the world if you're the only one doing it. And you therefore have no competition. And that, by the way, is one of the pieces of advice that took this young man, Vin Clancy, from homeless to a millionaire in 11 months. Without giving away his whole story, his business idea was, I know about social media. I want to help people, promote them on social media. You know how many people want to do that? Everybody and their mother. Everybody knows how it works. There's thousands and thousands of people. Why would anybody hire you? But if you differentiate and say, I help people in social media in this one little field, and that's all that we do, and we're the best at the world at doing that. The second you get your first client, you are in fact the best in the world at doing it. And now you have a case study, and now you are the dominant company in that field. And then you spend the rest of your time defending it against everybody else that comes in next. So he went from the same thing that people were paying him $100 to do to people paying him $50,000 a month to do the same amount of work.
Wow. That's insane.
It's so easy to do. And I'm not saying it doesn't take work and doesn't take commitment. I mean, I pushed him hard. I pushed him like he was a Navy SEAL. I mean, he did not get to date for a year. He did not get to party. He did not get to DJ. He did not get, you're going to work harder than most people will for 1 year so you can live the rest of your life the way most people can't. And that was the deal. And he delivered.
Jay,
and now he's future-proof.
Okay, that's really interesting, like, because it's completely identifies the title of your new book as well, like future-proofing you. Yeah, I'm really excited to read that one once it comes out.
Yeah, I just spent the week doing the audiobook. That is so much work. So I apologize that this is the voice you have to hear for like 9 hours. But everybody told me from the first book that people like hearing the actual author as opposed to a professional voice that sounds so wonderful. But it's I don't do this to make money. I do this to pay it forward. And I've been so lucky and so blessed to die with this knowledge is a crime when you can share it and change people's lives so easily. And those people, in fact, are not just changing their lives, but they're changing the world to make it better. And one of the topics in this book that I really think people need to understand is capitalism is broken. The way that capitalism works is you have constant growth. If your company isn't growing, you lose shareholders, go off the stock market, But on a finite planet, you cannot have infinite growth. I mean, living in India, I think you guys are more aware of this than many. I mean, you got a lot of people. So sustainable capitalism is inevitable. So you have two choices. You can wait till governments regulate and things get worse on this planet, or you can get ahead of the regulation and figure out what are the true costs of what you create, the cost of the environment, the cost in waste, the cost in leftover, and how can you make this a competitive advantage? And we're now seeing the biggest companies in the world now doing this, not for the PR of saying we want to help the planet, but to be more profitable. Sustainable is profitable. If it's not sustainable by definition, it's not sustainable.
Yeah. Jay, I've listened to a couple of your interviews and your talks, and I have to tell you, whenever I listen to you, the way you speak and like the ideas that you spread out, it just resonates my mind to next different level, and I start seeing like different possibilities all across, and that's really
But see,
impactful.
that was already in you. That was already in you. Maybe I helped, kick you in the butt, or, show you that you're not the only crazy person on the planet.
Mhm,
But that's a great thing. When people, you've read Disrupt You, the
mhm,
first book, there was no secret rocket science that you need a PhD to understand.
mhm.
It's common sense after common sense after common sense after common sense until you see a roadmap to your future. And I'm going to, with whatever time I have left on this planet, I'm going to keep on shouting and working. And I'm working with governments to teach them how to have more entrepreneurial programs. I work with large corporations to teach them how to have entrepreneurs. I mean, how lame is it to have a hierarchical system in a company where you don't want to get any input from the people at the bottom who are coming in with new ideas, that all your ideas come from the top, somebody that hasn't been out in the world in 30 years? It's insane. So you can change that. And I'm a huge believer.
India, I feel like there's so much potential that's untapped here in India. And when you tap into that potential, we have a lot of creative ideas. We have a lot of people who are kind of stuck into the rat race of going into one college, and it's insane, and you might not even believe it, that every year more than 1.5 million students, like high school students, take one exam to get into the best engineering schools of the country.
And if
and
they don't get in, they think their life's over.
and only 5,000 of them get selected, and rest, more than 14.99%, like 14.99 million people, they just prepare for it again and like settle for less, and they believe that that's in it for them. I mean, they just settle for less.
And it makes no sense when you realize that if you get a job, your best job in the world, you're getting paid an hourly wage. And that taps out real early. Maybe in the beginning, because you went to good engineering school and have a degree, you're making more than everybody else. But 10 years out, the guy who decided to, sell books or publish something or solve a problem or make an app is making unlimited upside. So the other thing that I talked about in future proofing you is most people are not taught how to structure a deal. As a consultant, like, at Deloitte, I mean, my hourly rate was insane.
Mhm.
But as an independent, my whole life, I never charge. Here's why. I said, listen, I could charge you so much money, and then that actually makes it harder for your business, or I'll take equity. That way, I'm aligned with you. If I can make your business worth a lot of money, you make money, I make money. My most successful example was there was a company that I took a stake in,
Mhm.
and they had $30,000 in revenue. 90 days later, I had them public on NASDAQ at 400 million market cap, and I had a very large piece of that company. Much better than getting paid by the hour. So there's many opportunities for you to structure a deal in your life, not to just be a wage slave. I don't believe in slavery.
That's so profound, Jay. Okay, if you were to look back on your own journey and
Okay.
change a few things and tweak a little bit of the things that you did, what would that be and why?
Well, I'm happy and fulfilled. I have great kids, a great wife, a great life. So to tweak anything or change anything, no matter how painful it may have been or any problem, I wouldn't be in the exact place that I am today.
Mhm.
So therefore, I would change nothing. But if if somebody could have whispered in my ears things that would have made the journey easier and less painful, it's that it takes time, accept failure, fear is your friend, and I have a whole chapter on why fear is a tool.
Mhm.
And if you don't quit, you make it to the end. And you heard my commencement speech. It was one of my favorite speeches because it was kind of fun. When you're standing in front of 2,000 people that just want to go party, you better be entertaining, or they're going to
That was an
turn on
entertaining speech as well.
you. But every one of my friends from college became globally famous.
Mm-hmm.
And most of my friends today are globally famous people, not because, we all went to hang out at some secret famous people club. They just didn't give up. They just kept on going. And all of them, it wasn't a straight path to the top.
Mm-hmm.
So understand that there's no shame in failing. There's shame in giving up. And whenever you have that doubt, whenever your parents are telling you should have taken a safe route or this or that, look over your shoulder how far you've come. There is no safe job. There is no secure company.
Mm-hmm.
And I've watched 100-year-old companies disappear. I mean, EMI signed Enrico Caruso, invented the electric music industry, signed the Beatles. I mean, 100-year-old company, gone. Do people still listen to music? Absolutely. Do people still love music? Absolutely. Is music still part of every day? Yes. But the business model broke. So, the Stone Age didn't end because we ran out of stones. The oil age isn't going to run out of oil. It's going to be that we figured out solar is actually now cheaper. Forget that it's better for the environment. It's actually just cheaper.
Mm-hmm.
So there's always going to be change. Well, change means whoever has the lead and owns something and doesn't want it to change,
Mm-hmm.
they don't have control over what's new. So you have the opportunity to be part of change, or you can figure out. And if these students are so bright to take this test, I really want to ask one of them this question. If they've taken 5,000 out of 1.5 million, what percentage make it? So knowing those odds, why would you put your energy into something that is doomed for failure when 60% of businesses make it their first year? By the fifth year, you have something like 40% make it. I mean, wouldn't that energy be better spent on something that you can control the outcome as opposed to it's just a random, Would you spend, if I put a bowl of a swimming pool filled with 1.5 million pieces of candy, and one of them gave you $1 billion, but all the rest were poison, would you jump in and eat one? No. So what's expensive? So in the chapter about fear, you're only here because every generation before you was fearful. If your great-great-great-great-great-great-grandfather, in the cave, Ugg, wasn't afraid of saber-toothed tigers, you wouldn't be here. Yeah. So everybody that survived because, here's the Mongolians coming in mass. I'll go hide over here. Here's the pirates, whatever it might be. So our lizard brain has fear right at the front, okay? So we're afraid. We're afraid of disappointing our parents. We're afraid of looking embarrassed. We're afraid of all these things. And so we don't try. Now, I'm not saying that those fears aren't real, but what if you spend your whole lifetime and achieve nothing? Isn't that a bigger fear?
That is.
If you have this job that pays you just enough to live, but not enough to enjoy life, did you just waste your one shot at this planet? If you believe in more shots at the planet, then you got more shots than I do. So focus on a different fear. What happens if you don't? Okay. What happens if you spend all your time with your company and you believe in that company and they go out of business? Or the whole industry that you're in goes out of business. I know a lot of talented people in the music business that, were record promoters or worked with radio or all this stuff. When music industry disappeared, they couldn't go to another competitor. Everybody went out of business. Henry Ford, there was nobody, working on horses. You could be the best blacksmith in the country. There's no horses. Mm-hmm. So focus on those fears. And then the last part about fear is the person across the table from you that you're trying to sell, that you're trying to hire, that you're trying to do business with, guess what motivates them too? They have the same lizard brain with the same fears. And they're instantly thinking, within a split second, is this person going to hurt me? Is this person, is this person food? All the normal things that take place in that first second. And this might be the most important meeting in your life. The make or break, you put so much research, you have to have this. If you could make this sale, your company takes off, your mother will be proud of you, But to the other person, you're the only thing between him and going to lunch. He doesn't care. Right. He's not supposed to. It's not his job to. Mm-hmm. He got it on his calendar for whatever reason, his mind somewhere else. But if you can leverage the 3 fears that motivate him, second that fear brain's in, what can I do to make the fear go away? Now they're in tune. I'm not saying threaten to beat them up. I'm not saying that's what the type of fear is, but, did you know your competitor's using this? Do you know my boss is having a meeting with your boss later in the week? And I just want to give you the background so that you're on top of it. I mean, there's a whole bunch of different ways to play to the insecurities of that person not wanting to lose their job, not fear of missing out, not wanting to make a bad decision. So I have turned that table so many times because once you start thinking, solve for the other person first. Ever since Newton, I don't know how many people didn't study enough science to realize the world doesn't revolve around them. And once you can get away from ego and focus on what helps the other person, everything just smooths out.
That is so profound. And I mean, I can just relate to it so much because that just like the fear response is natural. And when you drive your focus from the fear of not of from attempting something, then your fear of not even trying that out in your entire life, it's just using your fear response for you to grow and for you to do things that you always wanted to do. And I think that's really interesting to see how we can change and play around with our own fear response.
And I didn't start, I'm not some deep introspective, tree hugging guru that had all these great philosophies, sitting under a lotus tree. I had 2 sons very young. I love my boys. I wanted them to have a better life than I did. The fear of letting them down, the fear of disappointing and hurting and them and that drove me. That was my great motivator. Then when they're grown up and life's good and everything, I had no motivation left. I didn't need to make more money. But when I started realizing that I could help others help themselves, when I could change the outcomes of countries, where I could help their whole economy by changing public policy in those countries, I fly around 100,000 miles a year to every corner. In January, before the pandemic, I was in 4 continents and 12 countries in January. Since March 10th, I've only left my house 4 times. So big change of life. But with the positive attitude, I'll tell you a fun story that I haven't said in other interviews. I thought the U.S. wouldn't be as abysmally ill-prepared and screwed up as we turned out to be. I thought we'd maybe be locked in for 1, 2, 3 months most. And so I believe in positive mindset, a growth mindset. How can I take this and show people it's good? Now, I'm not making light of people died and it's a horrible disease and all that. I'm just saying your mindset. So my whole life, nobody in business knew this, I always paint. I enjoy painting. And I never showed my stuff, but I wanted to show people, let's look at the pandemic as a gift of time. I'm going to paint a painting every day and put it up on social media. And I'm just doing to show people, and the emotions of what was going through, what was I missing in the real world, what's happening and all of that. And a surprising thing happened. That was the purest intent to do it. People liked my art. That was nice. I didn't expect that. People liked my art around the world. I really didn't expect that. I started hearing from art agents and gallery owners around the world. And fast forward in September, I had a solo art show in New York. I didn't get to go because of the pandemic, but I mean, that's mind blowing. People are buying my art for ridiculous amounts of money. which isn't the point, but it's nice validation that people like my art. Now, the only reason that opportunity came to me was because I was trying to have a growth mindset. I was trying to show, how do we turn this obstacle into opportunity?
Mhm.
The obstacle is I can't leave my house. I can't have my normal life. What's the opportunity? What are those things that I always wanted to do that I told myself I didn't have the time to do?
Now is the time.
And I was knocked out another book. I mean, it was either that or go insane, because being stuck in the house for a year has been unbelievable.
That's great. Before I ask you the last question, what's the impact that you want to have on the world?
Um, Here's my soapbox. I love democracy. I think it's the only way that we should rule. But here's the thing. Democracy only exists if you have a stable middle class. The world is getting more consolidation of wealth at the top.
Mhm.
That's destabilizing. In the US, we have 140 million people at or below the poverty line. I mean, that's one of the world's richest countries. That shouldn't be. So how do you make a middle class? You make a middle class by creating jobs. Governments don't create jobs. The only people that create jobs is entrepreneurs. So if I can teach more people to create more jobs in a time when so many of our existing jobs will be automated out of existence,
Mhm.
then I'm helping make the world a better place. And that's my purpose in life, is to heal however I can. I don't get to live forever, but the impact of my ideas can. And that should be really exciting to people, that you can start society on a change. And we've got, take your big issues. I mean, we're overheating the planet. Half of all animals on the planet have disappeared in my lifetime. That is insane. 2/3 of the birds in North America have disappeared. You don't notice it. You don't go, wow. And then you realize one day, I haven't seen like a flock of birds in the sky since I was a little kid,
Mhm.
because we called them swamps and we got rid of them. They're wetlands. We got rid of all the insects with pesticides. There's nothing for birds to eat. So we have so many things that could be solved. What could be a more fun and exciting way? And since we're all interconnected, you might be the only lunatic in your city that sees that. But you'll find the other lunatic in Germany, and you'll find one in South America, and you'll find one everywhere, until, an 11-year-old kid went on the bid about no more plastic straws, and there's no more plastic straws in the United States.
Mhm.
Greta Thunberg, spoke at the UN at like 15. Um, I have a story in Disrupt You about a girl comes home from school, heard that her aunt, who she loves, has breast cancer, and was really sad. And this isn't some genius IQ kid. And she was learning about neural networks in her computer class to make the little something. She said, why don't we apply this to breast cancer? And what this 14-year-old kid created in 1 year is more accurate at detecting breast cancer than anything that exists on the market. How many? They're estimating that she's saving 40,000 lives a year at 14.
Wow.
So yeah, I'm a failure, right? I'm nowhere near what can be done and what people are doing. But if I can inspire people to do those types of things, what could be better?
That's incredible, Jay. If you were to give an advice to someone who's just starting out in their own journey and figuring things out, what would that be?
So Tom Bilyeu wrote the intro to my book. I don't know if you know who Tom Bilyeu is.
I love him.
And so I love him too. So I'm stealing this advice from him, but it is spot on. To that person, to anybody listening, I want you to know something sincerely. Tom and I believe in you. I believe in you. I don't have to have met you.
Mhm.
I've met humans. Humans are capable of incredible things, incredible change. We're the most adaptive species ever created.
Mhm.
You are part of that. So I know you can do it. How can I get you started? How can I help you? How can I convince you to disrupt yourself? And so If anybody wants to start today, even before they get the book or anything, I have a free workbook on my website. Just go to jaysamit.com, JAYSAMIT.com, click on the thing, and I'll send you the workbook. You have the power to change the world. I've seen it done. And if you look throughout history, it's the stubborn that change the world.
Mm-hmm.
Not the ones that follow the status quo, not the ones that apply to go to the right school with everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
Richard Branson dropped out. Bill Gates dropped out. Zuckerberg dropped out. Do I need to go through the list of people that dropped out?
Mm-hmm.
Steve Jobs didn't even go to class. He was so not interested and bored by that, but he took one class when it was a little artsy college in calligraphy, fancy writing.
Mm-hmm.
The most useless class that a parent would ever tell you. Like, why aren't you learning, something useful? But fast forward when they're making the first PCs, IBM's making a PC, that class stuck in his mind. He said, wait a second, my PC is going to have different fonts. And that one choice of giving you the choice of different letters made graphic artists go to that and create Adobe and create music. And now a whole sector of the world, because he took that one class in calligraphy. Travel, meet people of different cultures, get online and talk to people. The intersection of ideas from different places is where new ideas come from. When the Silk Road went through the Mideast from China, all those towns along the way that knew the caravan was coming, and a guy would bring his chair, somebody would bring his olives, whatever. That's what became these cities of ideas and great learning. It's a mixture. I have yet to have a good idea. I have a lot of good half ideas, and I constantly look for the other half.
That's so incredible, Jay. Thank you so much for having this insightful conversation. I think we've had a lot of really insightful moments where you talked about a lot of stuff, and that resonated with me. And I'm sure when someone's listening to this, they have moments and they get the inspiration to start on their own journeys and solve problems that might change the world for the better.
Terrific. Well, stay safe. Thank you for the opportunity, and thank you, everybody, for your time.